Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening. Welcome back to AI and the Future of Work. This is your host, Dan Turchin, CEO of PeopleRain, the AI platform for IT and HR employee service, and advisor at Insight Finder, the system of intelligence for IT operations. Thank you for turning this passion project into one of the most downloaded podcasts about the future of work. If you enjoy what we do, please like, comment, and share in your favorite podcast app. We read all of your feedback, and it means so much to us. We've been discussing the ethics of AI recently, and more broadly, the future of software development. Krishna Gade from Fiddler discussed how to productize AI explainability. Jeff Meyerson, that rabble-rouser, discussed the new developer toolset, and Charity Majors discussed how better instrumentation makes it easier to develop high-quality apps. The recurring theme is that humans are responsible for decisions made by machines and also for the quality of their end products. No amount of co-pilot, human-machine pair programming could possibly replace human creativity and intuition. Well, today's guest is no stranger to managing complex AI models at scale. Bindu Reddy is the CEO and founder of Abacus AI, having previously founded Post Intelligence, which was acquired by Uber, and spending time both at Google and at Amazon. Bindu and her team are building a platform to manage the lifecycle of AI models, from your data pipeline to the tuning of hyperparameters, all the way to detecting drift in AI data, to know when to retrain a model. These are hard problems to solve, and the team has not shied away from the core AI research that could eventually lead us to artificial general intelligence, or AGI. Bindu's backed by a world-class set of investors that reads like wall plaques in the VC Hall of Fame. Check out this list. It includes Mike Volpe, Ram Shriram, Eric Schmidt, Jerry Yang, Elad Gil, Deep Nishar, and others. An absolutely incredible list, a testament to Bindu. I've been looking forward to this discussion for a while. We all should be rooting for Bindu and Abacus AI to succeed. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome Bindu to the show. Bindu, why don't you start off by sharing a little bit about your background and how you got into this space?
Sure. Hi, Dan, and hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. A little bit about myself. I started kind of getting really excited about machine learning, I would say, just after my tenure at Google. So to give people some context, over a decade ago, I basically started at Google as a product manager. I was in charge of product managing a section of AdWords, which is Google's main advertising system. And I was kind of very intrigued as to how Google was making a lot of money, and obviously they've made a ton, as we all know, especially through search advertising, how it was making a ton of money by actually ranking different ads based on different queries. A section that I was very curious about was called ads quality. And so the engineers there basically used to work on machine learning and statistical models to rank different ads. And honestly speaking, when I was there, I was a little annoyed because machine learning seemed very opaque. We would have advertisers calling us wondering why a particular ad was ranked where it was. We didn't have good answers as product managers. So I was actually kind of like not that thrilled with machine learning as a space or as an area in general. I moved off of machine learning at Google, went on to become the head of Google Apps. At that time, the G Suite, as it is not now called, or the Google Workspace as it's now called, used to be called Google Apps. That's a set of Google Apps that a lot of people are probably familiar with. Things like Google Docs, spreadsheets, and slides. Had a really wonderful time working on these, prosumer apps, working with various different teams there, and then came to a realization at some point that while Google was great, like my true calling was to be an entrepreneur, to start a company. So we started this company, which was kind of focused on social media advertising. It was called MyLex in the beginning, then kind of got rebranded to Post Intelligence. That was the startup you just talked about. And at Post Intelligence, our job was basically to actually optimize content for influencers to post on social media. And again, I guess what showed up in the picture, machine learning, of course. Initially, we kind of dipped our toes into the water and started using some basic ML algorithms for looking at ranking social media content, very similar to some of the stuff that Google had done. And then we also started kind of like pushing the content which we thought would actually engage or get engagement in social media to our social media influencers. And while we were iterating in this process, about, I would say, 6 months into that process, we had one of our top ML engineers at that time create an algorithm which actually gave us an increase of 40% in our overall revenue. That literally changed the face of that startup. We went into kind of an inflection growth point, and that's when I became a true machine learning AI believer. That's when I spent my time. I took time to like figure it out, understand more of it, and then since then I've been, completely obsessed with AI, as people who probably follow me on Twitter already know. As part of that startup, we did a whole bunch of stuff around NLP and NLU as well. At some point, long story, we decided to sell that startup to Uber. And when we did, I had a choice of actually kind of staying on at Uber or like actually going to AWS for this very wonderful role of heading AI verticals. As part of AWS AI. So I was in charge of creating new AWS verticals for specific applied AI domains and uses. And that really kind of like grabbed my imagination because until then, I always have felt, and one of the reasons actually we even exited to Uber was that we felt that big companies, especially big tech companies, are in this undeniably dominant position because of the rise of AI. They have lots of data, they have lots of talent, they have a lot of technology, and that combination has basically kind of made the FANG or the FAGMA companies what they are today. And I was super excited about bringing that technology to kind of organizations of all sizes. So my role in AWS was perfect for me. I think I had a blast there, or rather I had a blast there and our teams basically created, as of now, 4 new services: Amazon Personalized, Forecast, Lookout, and Fraud Detector. Each of them have been, I think, very well used. I personally, after 2 years, the startup bug has always been in me, and I really wanted to go back to like being an entrepreneur again. I was also excited to be in the AI space, and Abacus was kind of was this idea, or the vision behind Abacus was bringing AI literally not just to every organization, as AWS actually continues to do, but also making it possible for non-data scientists to use it, and also like helping like large companies go to market with AI ML quickly. I strongly believe that we're yet to reach an inflection point on that side, where like people can just kind of think about creating AI models very much like thinking about creating podcasts or websites. If building AI models became that easy, then I think we're going to see a very different world. And I would love for Abacus to be at least a small part of making that happen.
I love how you describe that AI moment of inspiration. I think we've all experienced that in this space. To make it very real for our listeners, describe a customer of Abacus AI that you're proud of, maybe one that has inspired you with how they're using the products.
We have several customers. I think one of my favorite customers actually is a small customer. It's a startup. We have a very, very large customers, people like Flowers, Flextronics, and so on. But I always get excited when startups use AI really quickly and kind of, and it's kind of world changing for them. So this one is called Daily Look. What they basically do is they are somewhat similar to Stitch Fix. You can go and basically choose various different fashion items on their website. So you can pick things like skirts or blouses or dresses that you would like, and then they will start sending you packages every month to basically make sure that you like some of that stuff. You keep what you like and you send back what you don't like. So somewhat similar to Stitch Fix. They didn't have any machine learning. They didn't have any data scientists when they started speaking to us, but they had a big business. So they had good cash flow. They were making money. They had a lot of customers who loved some of the stuff that they were like shipping to them, but they had not optimized that business. So when they started talking to Abacus, they kind of wanted to build a model which would like basically decide for them which which items to ship to a particular customer so that the keep rate would be very high. So fairly standard model by data science standards. And, they basically, their CTO literally gave us some of the data, like tried to use our platform, and in a couple of days, they had a model which seemed like it would work. They actually integrated that model back into their website, and voila, that has been working really, really well for them. Their retention rate has increased quite a bit. People are now keeping more of the items than returning them, and their stylists, who are picking out these fashion items, are also being helped a lot by the model, where the model gives suggestions on which items to pick to a particular customer based on that customer's preferences. So this is when I see examples like this where things become much more optimal and user engagement increases and customers become more delighted, that's when I get really happy. And I'm very glad that Daily Look has not only been using us now for over a year and a half, but also they went to market really, really quickly.
Great example. Now, in the industry, we all benefit from some of the core research I mentioned that your team is doing. I had the pleasure of attending the recent state-of-the-art conference that you hosted, and I heard about some of the amazing things that the team is doing. I sat in on a session led by Colin, one of your team members. Would be great to have our listeners understand how you split the focus on productizing the research, but also doing the underlying research. What are some of the things that are being incubated in your labs that you're most excited about?
Absolutely. So I think the thing that really is our kind of like flagship research focus area is this thing called neural architecture search. It's a pretty large field, and at a high level, I would basically describe it as AI building AI. So the holy grail, if you think about it, and this holy grail is quite far off right now, is if we could basically give an expert AI system all the data that we have, define a particular kind of use case or a task, as the case may be, and then for that expert AI system to take all of that data, transform it, process it, and then build a model for it with that use case or task in mind, right? So basically let AI build the whole AI system. You don't really have to go off and do a lot of manual steps. I believe that we will get there, or we will get mostly there over the next decade or so. And that's kind of the overall area of research that we're focused on. Specifically in that kind of big area, I would say there is a sub area called neural architecture search, which is basically figuring out which neural net is the best neural net architecture given a particular problem and given a particular data set. So obviously these models will be different, or these neural nets will be different based on the shape of your data, the size of your data, and of course the intent behind what you're trying to achieve with that model. And the more you can actually build out a neural net which is robust to kind of like noise in the data, to missing values in the data, the better it is for the better it is for everyone, because you could potentially start creating those AI models at at an exponential speed in a way. So that is the area that we focus on quite a bit. We've actually published over 6 or 7 NeurIPS, ICML, and ICLR papers. So we want to push the envelope there. We also, collaborate with one of the top researchers in the area, Frank Putter. And in terms of actually incorporating that research into our product, the approach that we've taken tends to be pretty practical and pretty biased towards action in some ways. So a lot of research can't actually get incorporated immediately into product. Some of it can. So we basically, when we're doing research, we're constantly kind of thinking about which aspect of this can get into our product, and if we can do that, we'll get it done. Having said that, we still will do a considerable amount of research, and I would say that's more than 50% of research, where we're basically doing that research just for building the foundational aspects of that area, and actually kind of pushing that, pushing the state of the art in that area a little more. So that's kind of been our research focus. The good news is for the next year, we're actually going to be ramping up our research team quite a bit. We would like to be one of the top labs in the world, commercial labs. I don't think that we're going to be able to compete with the likes of MIT and Stanford, but I do think we want to be just behind, say, some of the very large big tech firms like Google Brain or Facebook and IBM. And I think we'll get there. So we're very excited for that whole area of focus in the company.
This goes against traditional startup wisdom, which is pick a problem, focus on a solution to that problem. And in the world of AI, that often means using off-the-shelf approaches, open source frameworks. How, as a CEO, do you rationalize the investment in core research that, to your own mission is sometimes hard to monetize?
This is a good point. I think, as you said, most startups actually don't really indulge in research, if the word of choice is indulge. My point of view is very different from the standard kind of, I would say, the startup of today. To me, Silicon Valley has always been about innovation. It's always been about kind of pushing the boundaries. Over time, unfortunately, I have to say Silicon Valley has become a little bit more about business than it is about innovation. Don't get me wrong. I understand that you need to build, good businesses for startups to succeed, and inherently that's the mission. But having said that, building kind of like a new restaurant and like getting that into a profitable cash flow situation is still being an entrepreneur, is still doing a startup. But the Valley has always been, to me at least, it's about technology and it's about innovation. And today that technology and innovation in its core kind of sense exists within the AI community. And if I have to attract people who are willing to kind of like do hard things, go where no one has gone before, invent new things, I have to like kind of attract scientists who really do want to publish. They just don't want to innovate. They just don't want to kind of like, make things happen inside of a company. They also want to talk about their work. They want to contribute back to the community. They want to share their ideas with the community, which, by the way, I wholeheartedly kind of agree with. And that is why the focus on the research. So my opinion, in the long run, this research thing is going to pay off big time. And also, it kind of brings back, I think, to a little extent, to the Valley, the idea of like trying to work on hard things and innovating and kind of and kind of like inventing things which big tech even may not invent in the short term. If you think 20 years ago, one of the reasons Google became Google was that they actually went and figured something out when it comes to search technology. And initially, Google's business model was actually to just license the technology to portals like Yahoo or Microsoft and so on. I think this research bug for me is kind of wanting this desire to bring back that old Valley to some extent.
We talk a lot about mitigating the impact of biased data, specifically in trained or supervised ML models. And you sent a provocative tweet out. I think it was in the last day or so. I wanted to read it for our audience and then have you unpack it. Bias is a shortcut both for our brains and for machine learning models. Without any biases, we wouldn't learn anything from existing observations. Too much bias, and we're not learning anything new. That's contrarian. Explain what you meant in that we wouldn't learn anything new if we didn't have bias built into our decision-making process.
Well, okay. So, really, when I mean bias there, if you look at the kind of standard definition of bias, all machine learning models are just nothing more than trade-off between variance and bias. So what that means is basically learning a pattern, right? For example, let me, give you an example of this that commonly happens with the human brain. Typically, when I'm actually walking down the road, I'm not thinking much because I know that there is a road and I know that my foot is going to like hit the road and not kind of and I'm not going to fall off into some big hole or what have you. It's because I know I've learned that pattern. I know what to expect, and I'm going to just make quick decisions. So that's the shortcut, right? I mean, typically one of the reasons stereotypes exist in this world is because the brain is making too many shortcuts. Because in some ways, some stereotypes make sense, right? In the sense that if you if you see a ball of fire hurling at you, your brain has to make a decision that is a ball of fire that is hurling at you, and you have to get out of the way really quickly. That decision has to happen in a few micros, very, very quickly. And your brain does that. In a lot of cases, even as you're operating daily, there are lots and lots of decisions your brain is making, which are made because of these shortcuts or assumptions or patterns in the data. Let's put it that way. That's kind of what the machine learning model learns too. If it looks at a lot of data, it learns all kinds of patterns. So there are lots. So by definition, an ML model is learning the biases in the data. A lot of these biases are real kinds of biases or kind of slants, as you may call it. Let's take a lead scoring model. For example, lead scoring model, one of the big patterns could be the source. Which channel did you get the lead from? If the ML model learns that the lead scoring model, the value in the lead scoring model biases the prediction, that's great. That's a great, we want you to learn that. But then but today in common parlance, bias is also used as a term for denoting only negative/wrong bias, meaning bias which should not be there, where it does not reflect reality. And so when you oversee patterns. So for example, when I assume all Indian women should have had arranged marriages, and that's a stereotype, that's a negative bias. Could be that the data shows that 80% of Indian women have had arranged marriages, but that doesn't mean that 100% are, right? And what we are as a society doing is trying to fight that bias where it's over biasing towards a particular standard kind of value. And that's where I was basically saying, look, if you over bias, you're not going to learn that there will be some Indian women who may not have had an arranged marriage. And that was the point behind the tweet. And of course, it was slightly provocative and controversial because, hey, that's what works on Twitter.
You figured out the formula for provocative tweets. I like it. I know that we're going to run into your hard stop. You got customer commitments, which is to be expected from a busy CEO. But I've got to make sure I get one last question in for you. I want to learn a little bit more about your entrepreneurial journey. What has surprised you most? And then maybe specifically, you've been at transcending cultures at Google, at Amazon, and the AWS AI side. What are the lessons that you've had to unlearn from being parts of those organizations? And then what have you taken into Abacus AI and incorporated into the culture there?
Very good question. I have had the privilege and honor of working in two iconic companies. These companies have cultures even today which are very, very admirable, and which I believe there's a lot to be learned from the culture. More than anything, if you ask me, what did I get out of Google or what did I get out of Amazon, I would say the culture of the company. Now, clearly, though, a lot of times big company folks don't work out in small companies. This is and this is again a stereotype of sorts, but the main reason for that is when you're in a big company, you have a lot more resources than when you have in a small company, and you also are working with a bunch of really, really smart people, especially in companies like Amazon and Google. So you take a lot of things for granted. In a startup, you're basically starting all the way from scratch. You have nothing. You have to hustle. You have to figure things out. And this is also why I don't really blame startups for not going off and doing things like fundamental research. There's a lot of times when they just don't have that time or energy or even the desire to do it, because the main goal of the startup in the beginning is, honestly speaking, survival. And then the next goal beyond that is to try to, extraction. And so the main thing I've had to unlearn in some ways is kind of this expectation of things to happen in a particular way. Inside large companies, you take a lot of things for granted. You have a lot of resources. Customers treat you very differently. All of that is gone in a startup. But on the plus side, things move really quickly in a startup. You have a lot more control of your, of the destiny of your startup, and you also get to, in some ways, work with people that you choose to work with, as opposed to in big companies where you don't have that much of a choice.
Well, Bindu, we are all, like I said earlier, rooting for your success. You're doing the hard work. I think you're advancing the field as much as anyone we've talked to. We've done about 100 episodes on this show, and can't say that I've talked to any CEO that has as bold a vision or is as willing to contribute back to the growth of the field. So thank you.
Oh, that's very nice of you. I hope we have more people, being more bold. And the boldness does come with an issue, which is that the more ambitious you are, it's probable that you're more likely to fail. But we'll see. Thank you so much for rooting for us. And thanks for having me as well. Bye.
Yeah. Hey, Bindu, such a pleasure. We're just getting started. Hopefully, we'll have an opportunity to track your progress on a follow-up episode. How's that sound to you?
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right, best of luck. Bye. Well, thanks again to Bindu and the team for doing great work at Abacus AI. This is your host, Dan Turchin, signing off, but back next week with another fascinating guest.